Hey crew, it's Vic, and I'm back with another Bible study. If you're not familiar with my Genesis study, or my Bible study in general, you should definitely start at the beginning. I hold unconventional views, go back to the top of the playlist. If you're here and you're watching, I'm going to assume that you know that I'm going to step on some toes, and we're going to go forward from there. We're going to be getting into Genesis 29 and 30 today, but first we're going to stop back into 28 real quick and talk about this sacrifice at the end here, where Jacob took the stone that he placed under his head and he sets it up as a pillar and pours oil on it, and he calls that place Bethel, right? So this is talking about the area of Bethlehem is where he has this vision. The lands that he sees is to the east and the west, the north and the south. This is claiming rights to Israel. That's what's going on right here. He's on his way to go get a bride. All right, so, but he has a direct experience with God, right? That is what is recorded here. We're going to take it at its word, even though, like, even though my views differ from the standard views. I like to look at it from multiple points of view, and we're going to take it at its word right now. And so he has a genuine experience, right? I had a genuine experience. I don't doubt that other people can have it. And so he has this experience, and he decides upon waking, he's not commanded to, he's not told to, he is not ordered to. There is no commandment for this. He decides, wow, that was an experience from God. I'm going to set up this altar, and I'm going to sacrifice and covenant with my oil that I already have. I'm not going to go and get special oil, but I'm going to bless this and put it in God's name because I had an experience here from God, right? And so then he willingly starts the tithe. That is what he is saying here. Now, the argument can definitely be made that this is Moses putting in the tithe coming, but even if that is true, and I don't know either way at this point, but it seems to me like this is the establishment of the tithe, and it is established upon a free sacrifice giving for blessings, right? You have already blessed me. Thank you. Here is the return of the blessing you have given me, right? This isn't if you give me this, I'm expecting to get back, but because you have given me this, I am now giving to you in appreciation. That is a very important thing to remember all the way through here. When we saw the sacrifice between Cain and Abel, the one that was accepted was the one that was freely given, not the one that was given from pride. When we got to Noah, he gave a sacrifice because he was thankful for coming out. It was not required. And then he was given the ability to eat meat. When we see the sacrifice of requirement is when things really started going astray. Whenever somebody said, go and sacrifice this thing for me, and then I will bless you, things got astray. That is what we have seen in Genesis so far. What he is doing here is the right thing. This is one of the things, despite the best efforts of men, the message of God bleeds through. And he is telling you right here that if you willingly give him back that which he has given you, then he will bless you further. It's not a currency exchange. If I pay this forward, it is I am thankful for what I have. It is living in an attitude of gratitude. It is being thankful for what you already have and freely, willfully, joyfully giving of your time, effort, and materials. That is what he desires. It is not a requirement for you to be saved or blessed to give. That is freely given from your Father. That was very important to hit at the very top of this because I don't think I hit it well enough in the last one. And now we're going to get into Genesis 29. Bear with me. I need a little water. Okay, so Jacob meets Rachel. Jacob resumed his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. He looked and saw a well in the field, and near it lay 3 flocks of sheep, because the sheep were watered from this well. That makes sense. And a large stone covered the mouth of the well. And when all the flocks had been gathered there, the shepherds would roll away the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep. Then they would return the stone to its place over the mouth of the well. Like, you're in the desert. Water conservation is a thing. Makes sense, right? To make sure that you have enough, you store it up. My brothers, Jacob asked the shepherds, where are you from? We are from Haran, they answered. Do you know Laban, the grandson of Nahor? Jacob asked. We know him, they replied. Is he well? Yes, they answered. And here comes his daughter, Rachel, with his sheep. Look, said Jacob, it is still broad daylight. It is not yet time to gather the livestock, water the sheep, and take them back to pasture. But they replied, we cannot, until all the flocks have been gathered and the stone has been rolled away from the mouth of the well, and then we will water the sheep. It's a little bit weird that he would command them, right? He doesn't know them. He just asked who they are. Well, he didn't even ask who they are. He asked where they were from. And then, more than likely, pleasantries were exchanged, though, right? That's a safe assumption. Hey, I'm Jacob. Who are you? Where are y'all from? Oh, we're from Haran. That makes sense. But it's broad daylight. It's not time to gather your livestock, water your sheep, and take them back to pasture. That sounds commanded to me. It might not have been. It might have been him asking a question. But it isn't given to us in an interrogative way. It's given to us like he's telling them this, and they're like, no. Like they're explaining that they have to gather everything. And I get that can be narrative, right? It can. And so it's not that important, but it kind of is. Because he takes this tone repeatedly. He doesn't have the authority here. He's not, like, this isn't his lands at all. He is by far a stranger in these lands. And these lands, like, these people are Israelites, right? So, theoretically, like, this is before there are actually Israelites, but these are the same peoples. Like, this is different tribes, all descended from Noah, and Abraham, if you look at the current conjecture, but descended from Noah at this point, for sure. And so, they hold somewhat the same values in life. Things that they hold dear to them are going to be pretty close to the same, right? You would assume that. And while he was still speaking to them, Rachel arrived with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. We don't have enough information to know just how uncommon it would have been. There's a really good chance that back then, you would have whoever was available to be the one in charge of the flock. There's a reason why we have Mary as in the Mary's Little Lamb, right? But we generally tend to think of being a shepherd as a masculine thing because it's dangerous. The shepherds were the protectors of the flock. There were no sheepdogs. They were the protection from the lions and the wolves and the other predators out there in the wilderness. And so it is a little bit unusual to my thinking that Rachel would have been there. Now, if she's just taking the flock from the house down to the well and then back, then yeah, okay. But if she's out there in the wilderness actually shepherding these sheep, that's a little bit different. And it says she was a shepherdess. Now, that's not to take away from her. I'm just thinking of the culture. I'm not saying she wasn't capable of doing it. I know many women that are. And so I'm just trying to think of the culture because that comes in important real quick. She was a shepherdess. And as soon as Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of his mother's brother Laban, so his first cousin, with Laban's sheep, he went up and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered his uncle's sheep. And then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. Now this could be kiss on the cheek. I would even assume so, because that's probably the culture. But I just don't know how much I can buy that a stranger who is asking, hey, does this guy live here? Is he still alive? And they're like, oh yeah, that's his daughter. So they knew that was his daughter. They're familiar with her. They're probably a little protective of her. And this just random guy who just found out who she was kisses her. I'm just saying I find that a little hard to believe. I'm not saying that it's impossible. It's just stretching the ability, right? This is one of those things that's glossed over. Nobody pays attention to this because It's a subtle detail, but it is a subtle detail. And it's like, that's a little bit off. And when you put those little bit offs, they just stack up until there's a whole lot off, right? If you start off and you're 1/4 inch out of level here, by the time you get 20 feet over here, you're probably 2 inches out of level, right? You got to drop. It's the same thing in the book. All the little inconsistencies. This is a problem for me, personally. It may not be for you. You may say, whatever. And that's fine. Oh, he wept aloud and he told Rachel he was Rebecca's son, a relative of her father, and she ran and told her father. Now, even if these two lines had been reversed, it would have been a little bit more believable, right? He told her first, and then I still find it hard to believe that he was able to initiate the embrace. Like, he tried to tell these people, if you read this, like it says, he's like, they're like, okay, here comes Rachel with her sheep. And he's like, okay, well, y'all water your sheep and get gone. And they're like, no, we're gonna hang out a bit. Like, that's how it reads. And they're like, no, we gonna hang out a bit and make sure everybody gets their water. So him being able to just freely embrace her after he had to ask who she was is going to be a problem. And then when Laban heard the news that his sisters, Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud, and he told Rachel he was Rebekah's son, a relative of her father, and she ran and told her father. And when Laban heard the news about his sister's son Jacob, he ran out to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his home, where Jacob told him all that had happened. Again, this is not outside the realm of possibility, but I just have it hard to believe that she ran home to her dad and said, hey, this guy I met down at the well, he said that he's related, and they just ran out to check it out. And it was just cool, right? I find it hard to believe that he ran to go meet him at the well. Like, she might have ran to go tell her dad. But I find it hard to believe that dad ran to the well. Well, if the word is true and inerrant, then that's a problem, right? I'm not saying that this in particular is a problem, but throughout. All right, so. And then Laban declared, after the story, you are indeed my own flesh and blood. And after Jacob had stayed with him a month, Laban said to him, just because you're my relative, should you work for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be. Now, Laban had 2 daughters, and the older was named Leah, and the younger was named Rachel. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel was shapely and beautiful. Now, when she say weak eyes, maybe she couldn't see. Maybe they were set wrong. Maybe they were cross-eyed. Who knows, right? But the other one was pretty. And so he wanted the pretty one, of course. And since Jacob loved Rachel, he answered, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel. And Laban replied, better that I give her to you than another. Stay here with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, yet it seemed but a few days because of his love for her. And finally, Jacob said to Laban, grant me my wife, for my time is complete, and I want to sleep with her. Okay, I guess. Maybe they're that close after this long, but I know as a father how my reaction would be if somebody told me that sentence, right? Even considering that, I want to say that I would have been better. Right? Everybody wants to say that it would have been better, but you want to think that you would have been better than to let that happen. But whatever. And so Laban invited all the men of that place and prepared a feast. But when evening came, Laban took his daughter Leah and gave her to Jacob, and he slept with her. And Laban gave his servant girl Zilpah to his daughter Leah as her maidservant. That comes into the story later, so they're adding it in now. And when morning came, there was Leah. What have you done to me? Jacob said to Laban. Wasn't it for Rachel that I served you? Why have you deceived me? This would have been a big deal, right? It would have been clear culturally from the outset that he was not able to marry the older daughter or the younger daughter, that the oldest daughter had been fertile. Like, that would have been clear. That would have been told. There is no way in 7 years that he did not stumble across this cultural problem. There's no way that he hasn't been talking to other shepherds and said, yeah, I'm working for my uncle here so that I can have my cousin Rachel to wed. And they're like, but Rachel, isn't Leah not Somebody along the way had to have told him. Somebody. So again, we're into the amalgamation of stories. And that is fine. It serves to get the message across. But it serves to prove yet again the inerrant word, divinely written, that's stretching things. All right. And then Laban replies to this. I have to assume that this was a heated exchange, right? You have to be upset. Like, that's rape. What this is rape. He agreed to marry this one woman. And you got him drunk and put him in a dark room and married him to another woman. That is not consensual sex by any stretch of the means. So we're talking about rape. And blessings come from it, right? Come on now. And Laban replies to this. Like, your boy is upset. Like, why have you deceived me? I have to assume that there's some heat here. He has been for 7 years working day, night, rain, shine with sheep in the wilderness. That is the job of shepherd. They don't really stay in the flock, right, or in the barn at night. They go out, like, especially at this time. They free ranged, and the shepherd watched over them out there. And so he's not incapable of violence. He's not incapable of physical strength, and all right. So you have been deceived into sleeping with the wrong one. I have to assume that there's going to be some kind of blowback from that. I have to assume that it's going to be more significant than just getting the response of, well, it's not our custom here to give our younger daughter in marriage before the older. Finish this week's celebration and we'll give you the younger one in return for 7 years of work. And Jacob does it. He just does it. He finished the week's celebration, and Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as his wife. And Laban also gives his servant girl Bilhah to his daughter Rachel. So now your boy Jacob has got 2 wives and 2 maidservants after serving 14 years as a shepherd for his father-in-law who deceived him. And the Lord saw that Leah was unloved. He opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And Leah conceived and gave birth to a son, and she named him Reuben. So she is complicit in the I don't want to say the word again. I've said it too many times already. It may even get flagged. But in the unwilling participation of consensual sex, right? So she's complicit in that, but she gets blessed. She's the one that's blessed. And so she gives birth to a son, and she names him Reuben. And she says, the Lord has seen my affliction, and surely my husband will love me now. If you think that a child is going to make a man love you, in any age, at any point in history ever, you are wrong. It will make them love that child. It will make them step up and provide for that child. But if they did not already love you, they will not love you because you got pregnant. Get that into your head right now. And again she conceived and gave birth to a son, and she said, because the Lord has heard that I am unloved, he has given me this son as well. Well, she can't be too unloved. Like, there can't be too much not loving going on. If she's having 2 kids, she's loving somebody. And if it ain't Jacob, then this blessing's got a whole different connotation. And so she named him Simeon. Once again Leah conceived and gave birth to a son. Now at last my husband will come attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. And so he was named Levi. And again, she's good. And he's probably mean to her. Do you realize that? That's what this has to mean? Because when it says she's not getting loved, it's not like she was not having sex. She was definitely having sex. She has 11 kids. So it's not about sex. It was about love. So if it's about love, then there's some kind of abuse going on, right? Now, I can't say that it may not be unwarranted. He has been tricked into this. He has been taken unconsensually. into an agreement and been kept into servitude for 14 years. And now she's being blessed with all these kids. And the wife that he actually loves is not. So maybe there is some resentment. Maybe. I can see where that might come into play. And so, yeah, okay. And then Rachel saw she was not bearing any children from Jacob, and she envied her sister. Give me children or I will die, she said to Jacob, because it's his choice. And Jacob became angry with Rachel and said, am I in the place of God who has withheld children from you? Now that is the proper response, right? Let's pray about it would be a little bit better. Not getting angry about it would definitely be better. But people blow up, people have problems. That happens. So Rachel, in all of her wisdom and her jealousy that her sister is having 3 sons for her husband, or Leah doesn't have all 11. I was wrong with that, but okay. So she sees that her sister is having sons for her husband, and she gets jealous. And what is the cure for her jealousy for her sister having kids? She says, here's my maidservant Bilhah. Sleep with her so that she may bear children for me, so that through her I too can build a family. Now, I am not taking away from surrogacy, but this is a remarkably dumb idea. It does not seem like it would make any sense. Right? It's one thing to get a surrogate from someone outside of your immediate thing, but this is her servant who will be the one taking care of the kid. That's not going to be your kid. And so then Rachel gave her servant Bilhah as a wife, and he slept with her. And Bilhah conceived and bore him a son. And then Rachel said, God has vindicated me, he has heard my plea and given me a son. So she named him Dan. Now, she's taking this as her kid. As Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again, hold up, and she bore Jacob a second son. And then Rachel said, in my great struggles I have wrestled with my sister and won. So I've named him Naphtali. Exactly how have you won? Like, how is that a justification for that sentence right there? As a recorded history from the divine inspired word of God, the second wife, on bearing her second son, out of the 5 that the man has, says that she has won. She hasn't yet caught up. She hasn't had a kid. She's had 2 surrogate children she has adopted from the servant who lives there. And when Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she gave her servant Zilpah as Jacob to Jacob as a wife. Really? So that now we're in competition to see whose maidservant can bear the most children? Is that what we're doing? And then this is the blessed unions from which all nations are blessed. The chosen people of the world. Come on, bruh. And Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah said, how fortunate. So she named him Gad. And it's fortunate that the 6th son of my husband is from another of our servants. That's wonderful. When Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, Leah said, how happy am I, for the women call me happy. And so she named her kid that. All right. Women call me happy. That's your name, dude. Now, during the wheat harvest, Reuben went out and found some mandrakes in the field. And when he brought him to his mother, Rachel begged Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But Leah replied, is it not enough that you've taken my husband? Hold up, Swolta. That's not what we read. And now you want to take my son's mandrakes as well. This brings in some subtext that is not in the book. We just read it. How does Leah, by any stretch of the imagination, from what we have read, get to say that Rachel stole her husband? We don't. Not from this. It doesn't make sense. Now, How about if he chose Leah? This is pure speculation. I am completely off the box here, right? And so if he chose Leah, and then after 7 years he got an itch for Rachel too, maybe, then you could justify this. But the way it went down, the way that it was written and recorded, that you tricked the drunken man, no, you don't get to say this, right? Very well. He may sleep with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes. Say what? How does that dynamic work? How does that happen right there? Has he not already have slept with Leah? He's already had children with her. Does he just not get to go to her anymore? Because she gave him her maidservant? Like, what's the dynamic here? How is this in any way justified culturally from the peoples of the area? Look at any of the cultures. Like, they're very similar. Like, they're not the same, but there are very distinct similarities in the Middle East. Like, very distinct similarities in the treatment of people. And so, it doesn't fit. And this, the mandrakes thing, and Jacob came in from the field that evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come with me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." And so he slept with her that night. Okay, so now Jacob is a prostitute and Rachel is his pimp. And she's pimping him out to his wife. Inerrant? I don't think so. Now, I always want to put the caveat in there that the overarching message survives despite the best efforts of men. The things that we are told and we are supposed to get out of this, we can still get out of it. But it is very important not to get tied down into this is the only translation possible. And it is very important not to get tied into this is the only possible way to go. Right? My way is the only way is the wrong way every time. All right, so she hires out her husband to come sleep with her from his pimp. And Issachar, Zebulun, and Dinah. And so God listens to Leah, and she conceived and bore a fifth son to Jacob. And Leah said, "God has rewarded me for giving my maidservant to my husband." And so she named him Issachar. That seems like a very motherly thing to do. It seems to me like if I was a mother and my husband had relations with my maidservant and had a child, and even if I was happy with that, and then I bribed my way into sleeping with him again, and then I had a kid, I would absolutely name that kid in celebration of my maidservant's job. I would absolutely do that. That seems like something that a mother would do. It just seems like maybe she could have found something better to name that kid. Again, this goes back into the amalgamation of stories. That's not to detract from what actually came out of that at the end. But this was an amalgamation of stories to give a history to a people who were taken out of slavery in Egypt. And in order to give them a cohesive bond that they did not have at the time. There was a bunch of stories, all of them scattered and dispersed. These people, we came from Zebulun and we came from Issachar. Right? But the stories of how Issachar and Zebulun, that was nebulous. They weren't put together. Moses came and took all those stories and tied them into a pretty little bow. And he put them on a scroll. And he said, "This is Genesis." And then he had another story that he said, "This is Exodus and Leviticus." All right. And again, Leah conceived and bore a sixth son to Jacob. God has given me a good gift. This time my husband will honor me because I bore him six sons, and he named him Zebulun. And after that, Leah gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. Like, after all these kids, he finally has a daughter. And then God remembers Rachel. He listened to her and opened her womb, and she conceived and gave birth to a son. God has taken away my shame. She named him Joseph and said, "May the Lord add to me another son." And Jacob prospers. Now, after Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me on my way so that I can return to my homeland. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served, that I may go on my way, and you will know how hard I have worked for you." But Laban replied, "If I have found favor in your eyes, please stay. I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you." He added, "Name your wages and I will pay them." I paused on divination because it is important to note that the decision made here is because of divination, and it is made by one of the blessed ones. Not just one of the blessed ones, but like the blessed one, right? And so here we are, using divination, which is later condemned. Not to tell you that divination is okay, to point out the contradiction of the fact. And Jacob answered, "You know how I have served you and how your livestock have thrived under my care. Indeed, you had very little before my arrival, but now your wealth has increased many times over. The Lord has blessed you wherever I set foot, but now, when may I also provide for my own household?" "What can I give you?" Laban asked. Sorry. "You do not need to give me anything. If you do this one thing for me, I will keep on shepherding and keeping your flocks. Let me go through your flocks today and remove from them every speckled or spotted sheep, every dark-colored lamb, and every spotted or speckled goat. And these will be my wages. So my honesty will testify for me when you come to check on my wages in the future. If I have any goats that are not speckled or spotted, or any lambs that are not dark, they will be considered stolen." That seems all right. Like, that seems like something that might have happened, right? Now, genetics are a thing. We are very well aware of how genetics work. It appears they were then too. It appears that they might have known something, not everything, but something about genetics and crossbreeding and interbreeding and species maintenance. Possibly, right? Where'd that knowledge come from? This is still very early in civilization, according to modern theories. Agreed, let it be as you have said. And that very day, Laban removed all the streaked or spotted male goats and every speckled or spotted female goat, every one that had any white on it, and every dark-colored lamb, and placed them under the care of his sons. And then he put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob was shepherding the rest of Laban's flocks. Jacob, however, took fresh branches of poplar, almond, and plane trees, and peeled the bark, exposing the white inner wood of the branches. Then he peeled branches in the watering troughs in front of the flocks coming in to drink. So when the flocks were in heat and came to drink, they mated in front of the branches, and they bore young that were streaked or spotted, speckled or spotted. That's interesting. And Jacob set apart the young, but he made the rest face the streaked, dark-colored sheep in Laban's flocks. And then he set his own stock apart and did not put them with Laban's animals. Okay, so we're almost done with this chapter, and we're going to wrap it up here because my voice is dying. But Jacob takes fresh branches of poplar, almond, and plane trees and peels the bark, exposing the white inner wood of the branches, and he sets the peeled branches in the watering troughs. And you might think, well, what would that do? Well, I happen to know that you can use almond. I don't know about poplar, I don't know about plane trees, but I do know that you can take almond wood and make dye out of it. If you soak it in water, it'll turn the water brown. And it seems to me that if sheep and goats drink out of the trough where the water has been stained brown, then when they shake their head, then maybe there would be brown specks and streaks. And it seems to me like maybe that's a little bit disingenuous. That's not to say that you could not make a justification, because this man has been taken non-consensually. He has been forced into servitude for wages. But still, if this is the blessed one, think about David for a minute. We ain't there yet, but we'll get to David. Early David was faithful. Early David had so much faith in the power of his God that he picked up stones to face giants. And we will definitely get into that story. But he was so faithful that his God would provide victory over a giant that he just picked up stones to use in his slings against an enemy that had the armies of Israel shaking in their boots. And here we have a man who does not trust in the provision of God. That is exactly what this is. And you could read this story and you could see where he might have justification for thinking that. I would argue that the faithfulness wasn't necessarily there to get it, because God is faithful when you are. Every time. He is often faithful when you are not. But he is not required to be faithful to those who will not hear his word. He's not. And the opponent in the obstacle, or in the game, the opponent, he's able to bless people too. And sometimes the blessings he puts on people can seem like the blessings that are coming from the actual higher power. But it's not. Like, that's how you can see these exceptionally wealthy billionaires who do exceedingly dark things and still succeed in a worldly manner, because they're not being blessed by God. They're being shown as an example by the other side, for he has power and dominion here. It seems like maybe he had power and dominion here, because if you truly had faith in the provision of God, do you really need to dye the water so that you can get the sheep and the goats? Or do you put the trust that God is going to provide the sheep and the goats that you are meant to have in the time and the place that you are meant to have them? Because that is faithfulness. Being able to accept that maybe the time that you are meant to have them is not now. And maybe your devious efforts are going to lead to slavery for your descendants. Did you hear me right? Okay. And so whenever the females were in heat, he would place the branches in the troughs in the full view of the animals so that they would breed in front of the branches. And then the animals were weak, he would not set out the branches. And when the weaker animals went in, and so the weaker animals went to Laban and the stronger ones to Jacob. And Jacob became exceedingly prosperous. He owned large flocks, maidservants and men servants, and camels and donkeys. And we just talked about blessings. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up because my voice is dying, and we're going to get into the next part, probably tomorrow, where we will talk about Jacob fleeing, because, when you do devious things, sometimes the devious things catch up to you. And sometimes you get the things that are coming to you, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get to return to your homeland and you don't get killed by the brother that you wronged. Sometimes you flee the land where you wronged people and you get away with it. And sometimes you get a whole dynasty based off of you, a whole peoples based off of you, a whole dozen tribes of peoples based off of you, the deceiver, the one not in covenant with the Lord, not faithful, not true. He's the one blessed. And it just does not seem to me that is within the will of my God. It might be. I may be wrong. But that's not the character that I have seen from the one who has shown himself to me. The one when I read this book, I get the message despite the best efforts of men. That's not what I know God to be. He's not the one out here blessing these people doing the wrong things. That is a grand deception on a massive scale, so grand that even the elect should be deceived were that to be possible. Let he who has ears hear. Let he who has eyes see. Read the Bible literally. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Till next time, I love you. You're perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. This has been pittstake. Peace.